and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're having a lovely Wednesday. Today I'm going to be talking about some of my favourite audiobooks from this year. So I listen to audiobooks on the regular. I listen to 2 or 3 audiobooks a month, and quite often they just get, well, they do get lumped, shush Charlotte, they get lumped into my wrap up at the end of the month. But I feel like I thought I would do a dedicated video to some of my favourite audiobooks from this year, because some of my favourite books I've read this year have been audiobooks, and I just feel like it would be a great opportunity to hear me talk about when I listen to audiobooks, how I listen to audiobooks, and some of my favourites for this year. What I will say is that this year I have found that I've been re-listening to, as in rereading some of my favourite books. Look at this pen, like I'm a teacher. Rereading some of my favourite books via audiobooks. So some of the books that I read last year and absolutely loved, I have now listened to the audiobook and rediscovered them and re-enjoyed them in a completely different way. So very, very excited to chat with you about it. So let's talk about how I listen to audiobooks first before we get onto the meat of the audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks on Audible on my phone. So I've got an app on my phone, here it is, Audible, and on here this is how I listen to all my audiobooks. Audible is a company run by Amazon, I believe. It's £7.99 a month, £7.99 a month, and I get 1 download a month for that, which works for me because I've got a whole back catalogue. I've joined about 4 or 5 years ago and I've got this whole back catalogue here that I listen to, and as I said, I've quite often been re-listening to a few this year. So if I don't like an audiobook, I exchange it and then I'll get a replacement for that. Or sometimes if I listen to an audiobook and I think, oh, I didn't really love that so much, I don't think I'll listen to that again, I would exchange it for another one. So as I said, I'm getting like 1 or 2 new audiobooks a month. Yeah, and really, really enjoyed it, never had any problems, find it really, really easy. You have to order your audiobooks not on the app, I do it on like my laptop or my computer at work, and then you download them onto the app and they're there and you own them forever unless you return them. You can also log into the device on a number of, you can also log into the app on a number of devices. So David also has access to my audio library as well, which is lovely because it means we can share and he can listen to the audiobooks that I've been listening to. So that's Audible. How I listen to them. So there's 3 ways in which I listen to them. I listen to the majority of my audiobooks on the way to and from work, namely on the way home from work, and I listen via Bluetooth in the speakers in the car, which is lovely, and I really enjoy that because I don't have like a miserable journey to work or anything. My commute home is probably about 40 minutes on a good day. It can be anything from sort of like 40 minutes to about an hour and a half. And I listen to the audiobook and it really does improve my journey and I look forward to getting in the car to drive somewhere because I know I've left off on a really good bit on my audiobook. So that's probably where I get the majority of an audiobook done. I would say that I listen to about at least an hour a day travelling. I also listen to it aloud from my phone, so I just have it playing aloud from my phone. That's when I'm doing sort of chores at home, particularly if David's not in. So if David's not in and I just want there to be a bit of noise in the house, I would listen to audiobooks aloud from my phone. I don't actually connect them to a Bluetooth speaker. That's something I could consider doing because I've got a Bluetooth speaker. And I listen to that when I'm doing chores or when I'm cooking or if I'm getting ready or those sort of jobs that you don't need, like jobs that I'm using my hands for. And then lastly, on headphones. So I do this when I'm walking places, when I'm doing something in the same room as David. So for instance, I've got a puzzle lined out here, a Harry Potter puzzle that I've been doing. The other Sunday, David was playing FIFA on the PlayStation and I just sat with my headphones in for 3 hours and listened to an audiobook, which was lovely, lovely, lovely. And the headphones I listened to are these ones that were sent to me. So I've got 2 sets now. The lovely people at Sudio Sweden, who make headphones, sent me these headphones about 2 years ago. It was a long, long time ago, and these are just wireless. They really are good at blocking out the sound. I can't even hear myself talk when I do them. They sent me these a few years ago, which I've been using like daily until then, and they're just absolutely fantastic. They're a bit makeup stained now where they sit where my blusher is, but really, really enjoyed them. Really good sound quality, enjoyed them. And then more recently they've sent me these, which are an absolute I didn't believe that I would ever find in-ear earphones that I like. So I don't know what the size of my ear hole is, but the iPhone earplugs, they don't stay in my ears. I've tried other ones. I've tried ones that are a bit suction. I've tried ones that go around your ears. None of them go inside my ears apart from these. So Sudio Sweden got in touch recently and said, could they send me a pack of what are basically like these little ear pods, so like wireless in-ear headphones. They come in this little pot, which is, they come in this little like magnetic pack, which is what you charge to charge the earphones. And they're little guys like this. And I am so worried about losing these, but I will try my hardest. And they fit in my bloody ears and they stay in. So I pop them in like this and then turn them and then they're in there. I can't believe it. Like and they also came with, lots of different ones of these to put onto the earphones, yeah, to see if they would, if I needed to change it, and I didn't need to. The actual ones that they sent were the ones that fit. So really, really delighted with them. Thank you so much, Sudio Sweden. This isn't an affiliate link, but these were gifted to me by Sudio Sweden. If you would like to get 15% off of any Sudio Sweden products, they've just got these, all sorts of other things. And you can use the code Lauren and the Books on their website. I will link their website and my code down below, and that gets you 15% off. But yeah, really, really impressed with these. I'm about to walk round to my sister's, so I'll be listening to those then. So those are the ways in which I listen to audiobooks. We're 6 minutes in, let's get on with the audiobook. So the first one I'm going to talk about is This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is a book that I read last year. It's one of my favourite books from last year. It's the secret diaries of a junior doctor working his way up through the NHS, starting as a junior doctor and working his way until he becomes a registrar, almost a consultant, at which point he abandons the job because he just can't handle it. It is hilarious and sad in equal measure. Found it amazing when I read it. Listening, and I knew I wanted to revisit it really soon because I just loved the book so much. And revisiting it this year via audio has been amazing. So Adam Kay himself, who's the author, narrates the book, which is always a big plus for me. They know what's in their book. They know which bits are supposed to be delivered in which ways. And he is a comedian and a script writer, and he delivers this perfectly. It is just so well done. His delivery sort of sits somewhere between like Joe Lycett and there's somebody else who I still haven't worked out who it is, but when I'm listening to it, it just reminds me of that so much. Also, the bonus of this is that you get a bit of bonus content at the end of the audiobook, which is an interview between himself and another comedian called Mark Watson, where they're talking further about the book and his life, etc, etc. And I will find that with Audible, quite often you will get little bits of bonus content like this, or you'll find a book that's available on Audible which isn't available elsewhere. And yeah, I just feel like it's a really, really, really well done audiobook, and it will have you howling with laughter and also weeping, and I just found it amazing. Also, what I will say is that David, my boyfriend, you'll know who David is, previously we've tried to listen to audiobooks and he has always stated he hates them. He doesn't like them. I don't like audiobooks. I'm not going to listen to them. And after listening to one together, which I will mention later on, he listened to this on his own and he could not stop listening to it. He was listening to it. He has a big commute to work. He commutes to London about 2 hours each way every day. And he was listening to it then. He was listening to it. He was coming back and telling me what happened. He couldn't believe it. And it was just so wonderful to hear him enjoying something as much as I'd enjoyed it. So I really, really loved it. And also, if you've read This Is Going to Hurt and you enjoyed it, definitely get on with a reread of it via audio, because I just feel like it was amazing. So that's my first one, which was fantastic. The next one is a series of books. It is the Nevermore series, which is written by Jessica Townsend. It's a children's book series written by Jessica Townsend and narrated by Gemma Whelan, who I believe is from Game of Thrones. I remember when I mentioned it in a wrap-up, a few people said, oh, is that Gemma Whelan from Game of Thrones? So I believe she's from Game of Thrones. This was such fun. So the Nevermore series follows a girl called Morrigan Crow, who is destined to die on her 13th birthday. She's a cursed child, and on her 13th birthday a chap called Jupiter North turns up at her house, a house where she hasn't had a happy childhood. Her father's remarried, no one's very interested in her or takes much notice of her, and he takes her away to audition for a society called the Wondrous Society, and she has a number of tasks and things like that to complete to get into the Wondrous Society. It's just wonderful fun. I really, really enjoyed it. The first and second book have been out, and then the third book is out in March next year. And yeah, I read both books first off, and I've got to say, I would say a lot enjoyed the narration and the audiobook of the second book so much more than I enjoyed reading the second book. I didn't not enjoy the second book, but the second book audio, I felt so much more involved with it than I did when listening to it, when reading it the first time round. This is just so much fun. Each individual character, Gemma Whelan does such a fantastic job of bringing them to life, giving them different voices, different ways in which they speak. It's just so well done. These voice actors are so well trained, and like I just feel like it just brings the book to life in such another way. Something about it made me feel super duper nostalgic, so it really brought me back to like being a child and listening to maybe a teacher do like read out a story and do different voices and things like that, and I really loved it. And as I said, I feel like I enjoyed the second book more when listening to it, and I'm actually considering just going straight to listening to the third book when it comes out in March, which is something I've only ever done once with another series of books which I'll mention here. But yeah, really impressed with the audio of this. And also, if you just like Christmas and Halloween and autumn and things like that as much as I do, then you will love these books. Honestly, the description of Christmas, in the first book there's a Christmas battle, the Battle of Christmas Eve, and there's a battle between Father Christmas and I can't remember what her name is, like the Evergreen Queen or something like that, and they have this amazing battle, and you pledge your support by wearing colours of what that, so if you pledge your support to Father Christmas, you'll wear red, and if you pledge your support to the Queen, you'll wear green, and it was just fantastic. I really loved that chapter, and listening to it on audio was great. So that's my second one. The next one is a non-fiction book. Now what I will say is that when I first started listening to audiobooks, non-fiction was definitely my go-to, and I would still say I edge towards non-fiction just because I feel like listening to audiobooks is a great way to take in non-fiction and facts and things like that. So non-fiction is my go-to, but I do enjoy listening to stories as well. But this next one is non-fiction, and that's TheFive by Hallie Rubenhold, and this is narrated by Louise Brealey, who plays Molly in Sherlock. She's the girl who plays Molly, who works in the mortuary in Sherlock. So yeah, she narrates that. So this is a book about the 5 victims of Jack the Ripper, who were all assumed to be prostitutes, which isn't the case, and I think because like 1 or 2 of them were prostitutes and the others lived on the streets, they were just assumed to be prostitutes. So this is a sort of deep dive into each of those 5 women, and where they came from, and their childhood, and who their parents were, and how they ended up to be in London at that time, and it goes all the way up until their death at the hands of Jack the Ripper. And I just found this so amazing and informative, but not overwhelmingly so. It's a really tough subject to do a book on and to make it as accessible as this. I really love the structure of it. I love the fact that it was split into different women, so each different part of the book was told from the different woman's point of view, and then within that you would find out about her life, and if for instance she worked in the workhouses, then there would be a sort of like bit into what it was like to work in the workhouses, and what it was like to come from abroad, from another country, to London if she was one of those women. And yeah, I just found it so informative. And I didn't study history very late at school. I studied it until I was in year 9, which is 13, and then I did at my school you had to pick between history and geography, and I ended up picking geography, and it's just really fun to sort of revisit some history. Fun is not a word you should use in a book which was about 5 women being murdered, but like I really enjoyed and appreciated the lengths and the historical aspects you would find out about women in Victorian times, which is definitely something I wouldn't have learned about when I was at school. So really enjoyed that. Found it very informative. Great read. Very much enjoyed the audiobook. The next one is the aforementioned audiobook that David and I listened to together. This is Mortimer and Whitehouse Gone Fishing, and this is by Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse. David and I went to the Lake District earlier this year on holiday, and we listened to this audiobook on the way there and on the way back, and we listened to this because there was a TV series called Gone Fishing on the BBC, where these 2 chaps, Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse, who both had quite severe heart surgery or problems with their hearts, a few years ago, and are now looking after themselves a bit better. And the series on telly follows them going to various places in the UK, fishing, chatting about the surgery they had done, chatting about their health, chatting about mortality, chatting about friendship, and this book is the accompaniment that goes with that series. And I hadn't watched any of the series, but David had, and I was sort of like trying to think of a way we could pass the time on the drive up to the Lake District, and I thought, well, let's listen to that, and if he doesn't like it, I can just always return it. And we both loved it. It was just so calming and joyous to listen to these 2 chaps who are actual friends in real life chat about friendship. You feel like you were listening in on a chat with them. And what I will say is that this it's a really unusual audiobook in that it's done by 2 people and they're just chatting. So I don't know how much, and I don't think it does, how much this book would actually correspond, this audiobook would correspond with the actual book, because at times it just felt like they were having a chat. Now there are passages where you can hear them reading out, and there's a gorgeous passage where Bob talks about fishing on the River Tay and just how beautiful it looks, and leaving Paul to it while he goes for a wander down the river and things like that. But then when it brings it back to the bits where Bob and Paul were talking to one another, I could almost certainly say that those bits are not scripted. They're just like keeping what is talked about in the chapter, but chatting amongst themselves. And I just found it amazing. I really, really liked it. I really liked the fact that you're sort of listening into a lovely chat. And that was the book that made David listen to more audiobooks. So I will forever owe it my life for making David listen to more audiobooks, because we really loved it. And he loves it so much. Occasionally, if he can't get to sleep, he'll play it out loud on his phone and go back and use it to go to sleep, because he just finds it so calming. So yeah, really, really, really love that one, and will forever be grateful for it to get David into audiobooks. So the last 2 are series, and both of them are book series that I've read before. So the first one is His Dark Materials and the Book of Dust, which is the new Philip Pullman series. So His Dark Materials is a series of 3 books which follow a character called Lyra as she travels between worlds, sort of finding the difference between good and evil. And I guess that's the easiest I can put it without going into deep plot points. And then the Book of Dust are 3 books. There's going to be 3 books. The second book is out next month, following Lyra and the characters in those books, but at different times. So the first Book of Dust, the Belle Sauvage, was set when Lyra was a baby. The second book that's coming out, and I always forget what it's called, but it's something Commonwealth, the something Commonwealth, that's going to be set when Lyra's an adult. So yeah, they're both sort of interwoven. And as the second book in the Book of Dust series is coming out, I have been re-listening to these, and I've been listening to them in the order which Lyra is, like what age Lyra is. So I listened to the first Book of Dust first, then I've listened to the 2 Dark Materials. I've got 1 more to listen to, and then when the second book of the Book of Dust comes out, I will listen to them. Now, to discuss them as audiobooks is quite different, because the His Dark Materials series is a full cast. It's narrated by Philip Pullman himself, the author of the books, but they have different actors who play different characters within that book, which is a real treat. It really does feel like listening to it's listening to a radio play, and the differentiation between characters is so perfect, and they're all just delivered very, very well. It's a real treat to be able to listen to that. Now, the Book of Dust is narrated solely by Michael Sheen. Martin Sheen did not narrate it, by Michael Sheen, who does a fantastic job of delivering different voices for different characters. And like, in the Book of Dust, the first Book of Dust, he has such a wide range of characters to deliver to. Like you follow a young chap called Malcolm, who is a young boy, and he's on this sort of journey with a young girl called Alice, and Michael Sheen is able to do those amazing voices of children, as well as doing voices of adults, as well as doing voices of demons, just having animate, like, it's just fantastic. And I really really do love those. And as I've listened to them a few times, actually the first Book of Dust, which is here, it's a big old boy. When I read it the first time, similar to Nevermore actually, I read it and I wasn't madly in love with it, but on listening to the audiobook of it, and I've listened to the audiobook of it 3 times now, I really enjoyed it. So I feel like maybe if you feel like you didn't get on with those as much, then the audiobooks might be the way to go. But really love them, thought they were amazing. And the last series of books I want to mention are the Cormoran Strike books, which are written by Robert Galbraith, who is the nom de plume of J.K. Rowling. And these follow Cormoran Strike, an ex-army officer who has become a private investigator, alongside his partner, his business partner, Robin Ellicott, and they solve crimes. Now, there's 4 of these books out now, and each one covers a different crime, and alongside that you're sort of learning a lot about Robin's past and her relationship with her husband-to-be. You're following Strike's past and his life in the army and what that means for him now. And these are all narrated by Robert Glenister. who again does an amazing job of delivering a woman's voice and a man's voice in conversation, and them actually sounding like a woman's voice and a man's voice in conversation. I am really gripped by these books, and I recently, so I'd read the first two with my eyes and then listened to the last two on audio, and I haven't actually read the last two, I've just listened to them. And I remember, it's actually a year today, it was when Lethal White, which is the 4th book in the series, came out, and I remember being so excited that it was coming out, and listening to it and just being beside myself to get in the car and listening to it at work, and just getting home, sitting on the sofa and listening to it, because I didn't want I just didn't want it to end. And I really, really loved it. And I remember Mercedes doing a similar thing around that time when she was listening to Lethal White. And they're just great books. And we recently, for my book club online with some friends, we read the Cuckoo's Calling, which is the first one, and I thought, oh, I've never listened to the audiobook of that, so I listened to it, and then straight away went on to The Silkworm, and already I'm in the middle of listening to another book for a book club, but as soon as that's finished, I'm going to go on to listening to the whole series again, because I just feel like they're brilliant, brilliant books, and it's really, really fun to revisit them. Especially, it's fun to revisit a crime book when you know, because they are complex crime books, and there's like, there's so many red herrings, and like, so many times I've not known who did the crime, but listening back to them now, knowing who did the crime, it's really fun to like piece things together. And yeah, Robert Glenister's delivery is just fantastic. So those are a few of my favourite audiobooks that I've listened to this month. Would love, love, love to hear some of your favourite audiobooks that you've listened to this year. Always, always, always looking for some inspiration and recommendations. One audiobook that I will be definitely listening to in the new year is the audiobook of The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. I've just finished reading that book, and a lot of people have said to me that the audiobook of it is absolutely wonderful, delivered by 3 different points of view, as the book is. So that's one that I'm definitely going to put on my list for next year to listen to. But yeah, would definitely like to hear some of your recommendations. And that's it from me, and I will see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!